I stood in my driveway, staring at a fine notice for $15,000. $15,000 for planting roses. Behind me, Karen Whitmore smiled from her window, holding up her phone like she was recording my reaction. She had no idea that in exactly 90 days, federal agents would be carrying boxers of evidence out of her house while news cameras rolled. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Barbara Chun, and I've lived in Meadowbrook Commons for 12 years. I'm 52 years old. I wear red-framed glasses that match my favorite red blazer, and I've been the HOA president here for 3 years. It's a position I never wanted but accepted when our previous president moved to Florida. I believe in rules because they create order and protect everyone equally. That bright Tuesday morning in late April, I was kneeling in my front garden, carefully planting heritage roses I'd ordered from a specialty nursery in Oregon. These weren't just any roses. They were David Austin roses, the kind that bloomed with layers and layers of petals in beautiful shades of apricot and cream. I'd been planning this garden for 2 years, saving up the $3,000 it cost to buy the plants and prepare the soil properly. I had my gardening gloves on, my knees pressed into a foam kneeling pad, and I was humming along to an old Beatles song when I heard the sharp click of heels on the sidewalk. Well, well, well. What do we have here? I looked up to see Karen Whitmore standing at the edge of my lawn, her arms crossed, her expression somewhere between smug and hostile. She'd moved into the neighborhood 8 months ago, into the large corner lot house at the end of Maple Street. She was always impeccably dressed in designer clothes, and she treated everyone around her like hired help. "Good morning, Karen," I said politely, sitting back on my heels. "I'm planting my rose garden. These are David Austin varieties." "Those roses," Karen interrupted, pointing at my plants with one perfectly manicured finger, "are a violation of HOA Code Section 7, subsection D." I blinked. "I'm sorry. What? Section 7, subsection D," Karen repeated slowly. "No homeowner may install landscaping exceeding 3 feet in height within 15 feet of the street without prior approval." I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. "Karen, I am the HOA president. I know our codes. These roses are planted 18 feet from the street. I measured twice, and ornamental roses are specifically listed as permitted landscaping in Section 7, subsection A. That's your interpretation. Mine differs." She pulled out her phone. "Click, click, click. I'm documenting this violation. You'll be hearing from me." She walked away, heels clicking rhythmically. I stood there, confused, but didn't think much of it. Karen was new, probably just confused about the rules. I'd clear it up at the next board meeting. I went back to planting my roses. 3 days later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. It was certified mail, requiring my signature. I was expecting my water bill. Instead, I got a certified letter with the HOA return address. Strange, considering I was the one who usually sent those letters. I opened it at my kitchen table, my reading glasses perched on my nose. Notice of violation and fine assessment. Violation: unauthorized installation of landscaping, features in violation of HOA Code, Section 7, subsection D. Fine amount: $15,000. Payment due within 30 days. $15,000. I read it again, then a third time. The letter was signed by Karen Whitmore, listed as HOA Compliance Officer and Acting Secretary. I felt heat rising in my face. Compliance Officer? Acting Secretary? We didn't have those positions. Our board consisted of me as President, Tom Henderson as Treasurer, and 3 at-large members who helped review architectural applications. That was it. I grabbed my phone and called Tom immediately. "Tom," I said, when he answered, "did you authorize Karen Whitmore to create new board positions?" "Who?" Tom sounded genuinely confused. He was 78 and sometimes got mixed up, but he was sharp with finances. "We don't have a compliance officer." "What's going on?" I explained about the roses and the $15,000 fine. Tom was quiet for a moment. "Barbara, that's insane. Our fine schedule caps at $500 for major violations. And Event 10, we issue 3 warnings. First, you wrote that schedule. I know. Tom, something weird is happening. Can you check our accounts? Make sure nothing funny is going on? I'll look into it and call you back. I spent the next 2 days going through every HOA document I had. Our bylaws, our code of conduct, our fine schedule, meeting minutes from the past 3 years. Everything. Nowhere did it mention a compliance officer position. Nowhere did it authorize any single board member to issue fines without a vote. And nowhere did it allow for a $15,000 fine for landscaping. But that wasn't the strangest thing I found. When I pulled out the meeting minutes from the past 8 months, since Karen had moved in, I noticed something odd. Karen had attended every single board meeting. Everyone. Most homeowners didn't even know when our meetings were, let alone show up regularly. And in the minutes, I saw her name appearing more and more frequently. Karen Whitmore suggested we review the fine structure. Karen Whitmore proposed updating our vendor contracts. Whitmore volunteered to handle violation notices. I grabbed my laptop and searched for Karen's name in my email. 87 emails from Karen in 8 months, most about compliance issues and neighborhood standards. I started reading. The Johnson family on Elm Street has been parking their RV in their driveway for more than the permitted 72 hours. I recommend a fine of $2,500. $2,500 for an RV. I've documented 7 violations of lawn maintenance standards this month. I propose we increase fines to $1,000 per occurrence. The Martinez family has installed a mailbox, not on our approved list. Fine recommended $3,000. My hands were shaking. Karen had been systematically trying to turn our friendly neighborhood into a fine collection machine. And the worst part, 3 emails mentioned revenue generation and improving monthly cash flow. HOAs aren't supposed to generate revenue from fines. Fines are last resorts for maintaining standards, not profit centers. Tom called back. Barbara, we've collected more in fines these past 8 months than the previous 3 years combined. Almost all issued by Karen Whit, and she's been signing your name to the notices. My blood ran cold. She's forging my signature. Looks like it. And the amounts don't match our schedule. They're inflated, some by 10 times our actual rates. How much has she collected? Long pause. $93,000. I nearly dropped the phone. Where did that money go? That's the thing. It's all in our account. Every penny. She hasn't stolen it. She's just been collecting it. I sat down heavily. This didn't make sense. Why collect massive fines if she wasn't planning to steal them, unless she was building it up first? Tom, what if she's planning to transfer it all out at once? That's serious. We need to wait. Let me check something. Papers rust. Baba, did you authorize a new signatory on our HOA account? No. It's just you and me. Well, there's a third name now. Karen Whitmore. She added herself 2 weeks ago. And Barbara, she's listed as the primary account holder. I drove to Karen's house immediately. I didn't even change out of my gardening clothes. I rang her doorbell 3 times in rapid succession. Karen opened the door, looking surprised. Barbara, what a pleasant surprise. We need to talk now. She glanced around, checking if neighbors were watching 10 Let Main. Her house was immaculate. White and gray, perfectly coordinated, modern furniture, expensive art. It looked like a design magazine, cold and soulless. Would you like some tea? No. I want to know why you've been issuing fraudulent fines and forging my signature. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email thread. $93,000, Karen. In 8 months, from fines that violate our bylaws, from notices with my forged signature. Karen looked at the screen, then looked back at me, and smiled. It was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. Oh, Barbara, she said softly, you really should have just paid your fine and kept quiet. What? You think you're so perfect, don't you? The beloved HOA president. Everyone's favorite neighbor, Barbara Chun, who follows all the rules. This isn't about me. This is about you breaking the law. Is it because, from where I'm standing, you're a terrible HOA president who doesn't enforce rules properly? Before I moved here, boats in driveways, lawns and mailboxes that didn't match. Complete chaos. It was a neighborhood where people lived their lives. It was undisciplined, destroying property values. I bought my house for $875,000. Know what it's worth now? Over $900,000, because I've been enforcing standards by stealing from them. I haven't stolen anything. Every fine is documented. Every penny is in the HOA account. I'm improving this neighborhood. You forged my signature, created fake positions, violated our bylaw. This is fraud. Karen laughed. Good luck proving it. Who will people believe? The uptight HOA president with illegal roses, or the concerned neighbor maintaining standards? I have the documents. I have the evidence. Do you? She walked to her desk and picked up a folder. Because I have evidence too. Evidence of you approving these new fine structures. Evidence of you signing off on my board positions. Evidence of you authorizing my account access. She held up documents. I could see my signatures, but I'd never signed them. You forged those too? Prove it, Karen said simply. We stared at each other. Here's what happens now, Karen said softly. You pay your $15,000 fine. You resign as HOA president. I take over. This neighborhood becomes pristine, organized, and valuable. And if I don't, I bury you in violations. I fine you every single day for every tiny infraction. I make your life so miserable you'll beg to sell and leave. Your choice. I looked at this woman who thought she could bully her way to power. You know what, Karen? I'm not doing any of that. Then you'll regret it. Maybe, but you'll regret it more. I turned and walked out. That night, I called an emergency meeting at my house. Tom Henderson came. So did our 3 board members and 6 homeowners who'd been hit with Karen's fraudulent fines. We sat around my dining table, covered with documents and my laptop. This is bigger than we thought, I told them. I laid out everything. The forged signatures, the inflated fines, the fake positions, the $93,000. Karen's addition to the bank account. We need to go to the police. Patricia Williams said immediately. We'll. But first, we need to prove Karen's documents are fake. I pulled up an email. This shows a board resolution I supposedly signed on February 14th. But I was in Hawaii that day. I have plane tickets, hotel reservations, Facebook photos. There's no way I signed anything. Tom snapped his fingers. And you submitted an expense reimbursement February 16th. After you got back. Your signature on that form looks completely different from this fake resolution. Exactly. If we compare real documents with fake ones, we can prove they're not my signatures. Shames Rodstein, who'd been fined $7,000 for painting his door navy blue, leaned forward. I'm a forensic accountant. If you give me HOA records, I can trace every transaction. I can show exactly when Karen started manipulating the system. Susan Park added, I'm a lawyer, real estate law mostly, but I can help build a fraud case strategy. I looked around at my neighbors, now united against someone who'd tried to turn our home into a profit machine. Okay, I said. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked like we were preparing for trial, because we probably were. James went through 5 years of HOA financial records. He created spreadsheets showing our fine collection before Karen versus after. Before Karen, $400 monthly in legitimate fines. After Karen, $11,600 monthly for petty violations. Susan compiled all violation notices, 43. Homeowners fined. Total $93,200. But 21 had actually paid $40-$8,700 transferred from personal accounts because they thought the notices were legitimate. We contacted every victim. One by one, they joined our coalition. A handwriting expert compared signatures. These weren't written by the same person. The forgeries show hesitation marks and unnatural pen pressure from copying, not natural writing. But the most damning evidence came from something unexpected. David Kowalski, our software engineer, asked for access to my email account. 3 days later, he came back with a report. "Karen's been hacking your email," he told me. What? David showed me the log files. These login attempts are all from an IP address that's not yours. They all happened when you were posting on Facebook from other locations. Someone was logging in from Karen's address. "How'd she get my password?" David shrugged. "Could be a dozen ways. Phishing email, keylogger, social engineering. But she's been accessing your email for months. That's probably how she learned enough about HOA operations to forge convincing documents." I sat back, stunned. This was beyond fraud. This was criminal hacking. "David, this is a federal crime, isn't it?" "Email hacking, yeah. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. That's FBI territory. We had financial fraud, forgery, computer crimes, enough evidence to send Karen to prison." The next morning, another notice appeared in my mailbox. Second notice. Fine assessment. Original fee, $15,000. Late fee, $5,000. Total due, $20,000. Payment required within 72 hours or legal action will be initiated. I stood in my driveway holding the notice. Karen watched from her window. She waved. I waved back, because I knew something she didn't. That afternoon, I had a meeting scheduled with Special Agent Rebecca Morrison from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. And in 72 hours, when Karen thought she'd be initiating legal action against me, she was going to get a very different kind of legal attention. I smiled back at Karen and went into my house. It was time to take down a bully. $15,000 fine for roses. FBI raid coming in 90 days. FBI meeting in 72 hours. Exact same deadline Karen gave. Ever dealt with a corrupt HOA member? Karen hacked email, forged documents, collected $93,000 in fraudulent fines, made herself primary account holder. Karen Whitmore had fined me $15,000 for planting roses, but what started as a petty HOA power play turned into something much bigger. I discovered she'd collected $93,000 in fraudulent fines, forged my signature on dozens of documents, made herself primary holder of our HOA bank account, and illegally hacked my email. Now, with 72 hours until a deadline, I was about to turn the tables. The FBI field office was quiet, professional, beige walls, fluorescent lighting. I sat in a conference room with Tom Henderson and David Kowalski, waiting for Special Agent Rebecca Morrison. She walked in mid-40s, sharp eyes, navy suit. She shook our hands firmly. "Mrs. Chun, I'm Agent Morrison. I understand you've uncovered what you believe to be a financial fraud scheme involving your homeowners association. Walk me through everything from the beginning." I took a deep breath and started with the roses, then the $15,000 fine, the fake board positions, the forged signatures, the $93,000 in fraudulent penalties. Agent Morrison took notes on a yellow legal pad, asking sharp questions. How many homeowners were targeted? What's the total amount actually paid? Do you have the original documents? David pulled out his laptop. "This is where it gets interesting, Agent Morrison. I'm a software engineer, and when I examined Mrs. Chun's email account logs, I found unauthorized access from an external IP address." He turned the screen toward her, showing the login records. These timestamps show someone logging into Barbara's account from Karen Whitmore's home address, consistently over a 6-month period. Always when Barbara was verifiably somewhere else, based on her social media posts. Agent Morrison's expression changed. She leaned forward, studying the screen more carefully. "Computer Fraud and Abuse Act," she said quietly. "Unauthorized access to a protected computer system. That's federal jurisdiction." She looked up at us. This just became a much more serious investigation. Tom spread out financial documents across the table. I've been the HOA treasurer for 18 years. These are our records showing fine collection before and after Karen Whitmore moved into the neighborhood. The spike is impossible to miss. Agent Morrison studied the spreadsheets, and you have a forensic accountant. James Rothstein prepared a full report. 21 homeowners paid $48,700 from official-looking notices with my forged signature. But the signatures were forged. We have a handwriting expert's analysis confirming that, I said, sliding another document across the table. The expert identified hesitation marks and pen pressure inconsistencies. The signatures on Karen's documents weren't written by me. Agent Morrison spent the next 40 minutes going through every piece of evidence we'd compiled. Bank statements, email threads, the forged authorization documents Karen had shown me, the timeline showing Karen had added herself to our bank account, the list of all 43 victims. Finally, she sat back and looked at us. Here's what I see. Mail fraud sending fraudulent violation notices through the postal system. Wire fraud electronic transfers of money obtained under false pretenses. Identity theft easing. Mrs. Chun's identity to authorize fake board positions. Computer crime zone authorized email access. And potentially bank fraud related to the account manipulation. She paused. Mrs. Chun, this is one of the most well-documented cases I've seen in a long time. My heart was pounding. What happens now? Now I open a formal investigation. I'll need you to provide copies of everything you've shown me today. I'll also need sworn statements from every homeowner who paid these fraudulent fines. And I'll need you to not do anything that might alert Ms. Whitmore that we're investigating. She gave me 72 hours to pay the $20,000 fine or face legal action. I said, that deadline is in 2 days. Agent Morrison smiled slightly. Let her try. In fact, if she does initiate any kind of legal action that gives us more evidence of fraud, don't pay anything. Don't respond to any more of her notices. Just document everything she sends you. How long will the investigation take? That depends on what else we find. But given what you've already documented, I'd estimate we'll have enough for charges within 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe sooner. I drove home feeling both relieved and terrified. The FBI was investigating that Waz Gould, but Karen was still out there, still thinking she had all the power, and I had no idea how she'd react when her deadline passed, and I didn't pay. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, I found not 1 but 3 new violation notices in my mailbox. Violation. Front lawn grass height exceeds permitted 2 1/2 inches by approximately 1/4 inch. Fine, $3,000. Violation. Decorative garden stake visible from street, not on approved ornament list. Fine, $2,500. Violation mailbox shows evidence of water spotting. Fine, $1,500. $7,000 in new fines. 4 grass, 1/4 inch too tall, a garden stake, and water spots on my mailbox. Karen wasn't just escalating. She was declaring war. I photographed every notice and emailed them to Agent Morrison exactly as instructed. Then I called our coalition members. She's panicking, Susan Park said when I told her about the new fines. This is exactly the kind of behavior prosecutors love to see. She's creating more evidence against herself. What if she tries something worse? I asked. What if she really does try to force me out of my house? She can't. HOA enforcement procedures require board votes. She's been forging those, but she can't actually enforce anything without going through proper legal channels. And the moment she tries, she exposes the entire fraud. But Susan didn't know Karen like I was starting to. Karen wasn't someone who thought rationally when cornered. She was someone who doubled down. That afternoon, I got a call from Patricia Williams, one of our board members. Her voice was shaking. Barbara Karam just showed up at my house. She said she's calling for a special emergency board meeting tonight to vote on your removal as president due to gross misconduct and financial irregularities. She said if I don't attend and vote her way, she'll fine me for the garden shed in my backyard that she claims violates setback requirements. I felt my anger rising. Patricia, you've had that shed for 12 years. It was here before I was president. There's no violation. I know, but Barbara, she had this whole folder. Photos of my shed from every angle. Measurements. Code citations. She's done her homework. She threatened me with a $15,000 fine if I don't cooperate. Don't go to any meeting. Don't respond to her. I need to call Agent Morrison right now. Agent Morrison called me back within an hour. Mrs. Chun, we're accelerating our timeline. What, senora? Photo. What, senora? Whitmore is doing right, now attempting to intimidate witnesses. Threatening board members. This is obstruction. It actually helps our case. But I need you to be very careful. Careful how? Don't engage with her directly. Don't attend any meetings she calls. Document everything, but keep your distance. People who feel cornered can become unpredictable. That night, Karen apparently held her emergency meeting at her house. Only 2 people showed up, both new residents who didn't know the full situation. According to our bylaws, you needed a quorum of 5 board members for any official vote. She didn't have it. But that didn't stop her from sending out an email the next morning announcing that I had been removed as HOA president effective immediately due to financial misconduct and abuse of authority, and that she was assuming leadership to protect homeowner interests. I forwarded the email to Agent Morrison and added it to our growing evidence file. Then I sent a response to every homeowner in the community. Dear neighbors, you may have received an email from Karen Whitmore claiming I've been removed as HOA president. This is false. No valid board vote has taken place. Ms. Whitmore does not have the authority to remove me or assume any leadership position. Please disregard her email and contact me directly with any questions or concerns. Barbara Chun, HOA president. Within 2 hours, my phone was ringing off the hook. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months were calling to ask what was happening. I explained carefully, not revealing the FBI investigation, but making it clear that Karen had been issuing fraudulent fines and that I was taking legal action to address it. By evening, the tide had turned. 17 homeowners sent me emails of support. 3 more came forward saying they'd also received threatening notices from Karen, but had been too scared to speak up before. Karen was losing control of the narrative, and she knew it. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning, I was in my kitchen making coffee when I heard commotion outside. I looked out my window and saw 3 black SUVs parked in front of Karen's house. FBI agents in navy windbreakers were walking up to her door. My phone rung. Agent Morrison. Mrs. Chun, we're executing a search warrant at Ms. Whitmore's residence right now. We've found enough evidence to justify a full forensic examination of her computers, financial records, and documents. I wanted to give you a heads up before the neighborhood gossip mill starts spinning. I watched through my window as agents carried boxers from Karen's house, computer equipment, files. An entire filing cabinet. Karen stood in her doorway in a bathrobe, her perfect appearance shattered. She looked small and frightened. Part of me felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the 21 families she'd scammed, the $48,700 stolen, the lies, forgeries, threats. The sympathy evaporated. The agents spent 3 hours at her house. Neighbors came out onto their porches, watching. Some took photos. By noon, it was all anyone could talk about. Karen didn't leave her house for the next 3 days. Her curtains stayed closed. Her car sat in the driveway. The woman who'd tried so hard to control every aspect of our neighborhood was now hiding from it. But on the 4th day, something unexpected happened. I found a letter in my mailbox. Not from Karen this time, from a law firm, Hutchinson, Marks and Associates. A big downtown firm with expensive letterhead. Dear Mrs. Chun, we represent Ms. Karen Whitmore in the matter of defamation, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud against her person and reputation. You are hereby notified that you have made numerous false and defamatory statements about our client to neighbors, law enforcement, and others. These statements have caused severe emotional distress and reputational harm. We demand you immediately cease all communications about our client and issue a public retraction. Failure to comply will result in a civil lawsuit seeking damages of $500,000. $500,000. My hands were shaking as I called Agent Morrison. "It's a slap suit," she said when I read her the letter. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's a common intimidation tactic. She's trying to scare you into silence before the criminal charges come. Can she do this? She can file it, but it won't go anywhere. Everything you've said about her is documented truth. That's an absolute defense against defamation. And the FBI investigation is a matter of public record now that we've executed the search warrant. She's grasping at straws. It feels like she's trying to drain my resources, force me to hire lawyers I can't afford. That's exactly what she's trying to do. But here's what she doesn't know: we're about ready to file charges. I'm meeting with the U.S. Attorney tomorrow. Based on everything we found in the search, we have multiple counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, computer crimes, and identity theft. Once those charges are filed, her civil suit becomes irrelevant. I took a deep breath. How long until charges? If the U.S. Attorney agrees, which I'm confident she will, we could have an indictment within a week, maybe 2. And then what happens to Karen? There was a pause. Then she gets arrested. Mrs. Chun, she'll be formally charged, arraigned, and either released on bail or held, depending on flight risk assessment. Given the evidence we have, I'd estimate she's looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 years in federal prison, if convicted. 5 to 10 years for trying to find me 4 roses. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, how a simple garden project had uncovered a massive fraud scheme. How one person's greed and need for control had hurt so many families. How close I'd come to just paying the fine and keeping quiet, like Karen had wanted. Around 2 in the morning, I got up to get some water. As I passed my front window, I glanced outside. Karen was standing in the street, staring at my house, just standing there in the darkness, motionless. She was wearing dark clothes, and if not for the streetlight, I might not have seen her at all. Our eyes met through the window. She didn't move, didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger? Fear? Desperation? Then she raised her hand slowly. In it was her phone. Screen, glowing. She held it up so I could see it, though I couldn't make out what was on the screen from this distance. She tapped the screen once. Twice. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between streetlights. My phone buzzed with an email notification from Karen. Subject line: "You should have paid the fine." My finger hovered over the email, about to open it, but something made me stop. Something about the way she'd been standing there in the dark. Something about that look in her eyes. Instead of opening it, I forwarded it unopened to Agent Morrison with a note. Received this at 2:15 a.m. Karen was standing outside my house when she sent it. Should I be worried? I locked all my doors and windows, turned on my security system, and sat in my living room with my phone in my hand, waiting for dawn. Whatever Karen had sent in that email, whatever she was planning, I had a feeling things were about to get much worse before they got better. The question was, what was she desperate enough to do? FBI raids Karen's house, carries out evidence boxes. Karen stands outside Barbara's house at 2 a.m. Sends mysterious email with "You should have paid the fine." What do you think is in Karen's email? Drop your theories in the comments. Karen files $500,000 defamation lawsuit. FBI preparing indictment for 5 to 10 years prison time. The FBI had raided Karen's house, seizing evidence of her $93,000 fraud scheme. She'd responded with a $500,000 defamation lawsuit, trying to intimidate me into silence. 10 at 2 a.m. She stood outside my house and sent an email with the subject line: "You should have paid the fine." I'd forwarded it, unopened, to the FBI. Now, I was about to find out what she'd written. Agent Morrison called me at 7 a.m. Her voice was tense. "Senora Chun, do not open that email Karen sent. Don't click any links. A cybercrime specialist is coming within the hour." My stomach dropped. What's in it? A rant about how you ruined her life, but embedded are 3 links containing ransomware designed to encrypt your computer and demand payment. I felt cold. She tried to give me a virus, not just a virus. Ransomware. If you'd clicked those links, every file on your computer would have been locked. Family photos, financial records, everything. Then she would have demanded money, probably disguised as a fine, to unlock them. It's called cyber extortion, and it just added another federal charge to her list. How did she even know how to do that? We found evidence during the search warrant that she'd been researching cyber attack methods for weeks, downloaded tools from the dark web, watched tutorial videos. She was planning this as a backup if the legal intimidation didn't work. I sat down heavily. Karen hadn't just been desperate. She'd been actively planning to hurt me. What happens now? Now we move up the arrest timeline. The U.S. attorney has approved the charges. We're bringing her in today. I watched from my window as FBI vehicles arrived at 10 a.m. Agent Morrison and 3 agents walked to Karen's door. They knocked, waited, knocked again. Karen appeared in yoga pants and a t-shirt, messy ponytail. The shock on her face when Agent Morrison showed her badge was visible even from my window. Karen's hand went to her mouth. She shook her head, stepped back. Then the handcuffs came out. Watching Karen Whitmore, the woman who'd tried to find me into oblivion, who'd forged my signature, who'd stolen from my neighbors, who'd tried to hack my computer, being led out of her house in handcuffs, was surreal. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant. Part of me just felt sad that it had come to this. But mostly, I felt relief. It was finally over. Or so I thought. Neighbors were coming out of their houses now, watching as Karen was placed in the back of an FBI vehicle. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down had her phone out, recording the Johnson family. The ones Karen had fined $2,500 for their R. They stood on their porch with their arms around each other. As the FBI vehicles drove away with Karen inside, my phone started buzzing. Text messages from neighbors. What's happening? Did they just arrest Karen? Is this about the fines? I sent a group message to our coalition members. Karen has been arrested on federal charges. Agent Morrison will be making a statement to the community later today. Justice is being served. That afternoon, Agent Morrison came to my house with official documents. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where just weeks ago I'd gathered neighbors to build our case. The grand jury returned an indictment this morning, she said, sliding papers across to me. 23 counts total. I read through the charges, my hands shaking slightly. 14 counts of mail fraud, 1 for each victim who received fraudulent notices through the postal system. 4 counts of wire fraud related to the electronic transfers. 2 counts of computer fraud and abuse for the email hacking and the ransomware attempt. 1 count of identity theft for using your name and signature without authorization. 1 count of bank fraud for manipulating the HOA account. And 1 count of attempted extortion for the ransomware. What kind of sentence is she looking at? Agent Morrison leaned back. If convicted on all counts, the statutory maximum would be well over 100 years. Realistically, with federal sentencing guidelines, we're looking at 8 to 12 years, possibly more if she doesn't cooperate. And the money? The $48,700 people paid. Full restitution will be ordered as part of any sentence. Every victim will get their money back. Plus, the federal government will likely seize Karen's assets, her house, her car. Her bank account is to pay for the restitution and fines. I thought about that. Karen had been so focused on property values, on making her house worth more, and now she was going to lose everything. What about her defamation lawsuit against me? Agent Morrison smiled slightly. Her attorney withdrew it this morning. Once the criminal charges were filed, they knew it was pointless. You can't sue someone for defamation when you're under federal indictment for the exact things they accused you of. 2 days later, I sat in federal court for Karen's arraignment with Tom, Susan, and James. They brought Karen in wearing an orange jumpsuit. She looked smaller without her designer clothes and makeup. Her eyes were red from crying. When she saw me, something flashed across her face. Anger, shame. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the charges. Ms. Whitmore, you've been indicted on 23 counts of federal crimes, including mail fraud, wire fraud, computer crimes, identity theft, bank fraud, and attempted extortion. How do you plead? Karen's lawyer, a public defender who looked overwhelmed, leaned over to whisper to her. Karen nodded. Not guilty, Your Honor. I'd expected that. Agent Morrison had told me most defendants pled not guilty at arraignment, even when the evidence is overwhelming. The prosecutor, an assistant U.S. attorney named Sarah Chun, stood. Your Honor, the government requests remand. Ms. Whitmore poses a significant flight risk. She has no ties to the community. She's facing serious prison time, and she's demonstrated a pattern of attempting to intimidate witnesses and destroy evidence. Karen's lawyer objected. Your Honor, my client has lived in this community for nearly a year. She owns property here. She has no criminal record. She's not a flight risk. The judge looked at the case file. Ms. Whitmore, it says here you recently attempted to deploy ransomware against a witness. Is that accurate? Karen's lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, that allegation it's documented in the FBI's forensic analysis. The prosecutor interrupted. We have the email, the malware code, and evidence she researched these methods specifically to target Mrs. Chun. The judge frowned. Bail is set at $250,000, cash only. Electronic monitoring, no contact with any victims or witnesses. Next court date is set for 30 days from now for a status conference. The gavel came down. Karen was led out of the courtroom. She didn't look at me again. Over the next week, something beautiful happened. People started talking again. The Johnsons organized a neighborhood barbecue. Everyone came, sharing their Karen stories. Some were funny. The Martinez family fined $3,000 for a mailbox 2 inches too tall. Some were elderly, Mrs. Chun, who'd gone without medication to pay a $5,000 fine. But mostly, people felt relief and hope. I spent an afternoon with James Rothstein, going through the HOA finances. The federal government had frozen Karen's accounts and the fraudulently collected money. But James found that we actually had enough in our legitimate HOA reserves to start issuing refunds immediately to the families who'd paid. We can cut checks this week, he said. Full refunds to everyone. And once the federal restitution comes through, we'll have more than enough to cover any remaining amounts. That night, we held an emergency HOA Madinga, real one this time, with proper notice and a quorum. 47 homeowners showed up, the most we'd ever had. I stood in front of them, my red-framed glasses slightly crooked because I'd been so nervous I'd bumped them. I want to apologize. I should have noticed what Karen was doing sooner. I should have questioned those emails, those fine amounts, those fake positions. As your HOA president, I failed to protect you from someone who was exploiting our community. Mrs. Patterson, the woman who'd recorded Karen's arrest, stood up. Barbara, you didn't fail us. You caught her. You built a case. You went to the FBI. You stood up to her even when she threatened to destroy you. You didn't fail. You saved us. The room erupted in applause. I felt tears streaming down my face. We voted that night to amend our HOA by new rules requiring board approval for any fine over $100. New rules requiring signatures to be notarized on major documents. New rules making financial records available to any homeowner upon request. We were making sure this could never happen again. 3 weeks after her arraignment, Agent Morrison called with unexpected news. Karen's attorney reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She wants to enter a plea agreement. What does that mean? It means she's willing to plead guilty to some of the charges in exchange for a recommended sentence. She'll avoid trial, accept responsibility, and agree to full restitution. Why would the prosecutor agree to that? Trials are expensive and time-consuming. A plea saves resources, plus it guarantees a conviction and punishment. The prosecutor is offering her a deal. Plead guilty to 10 counts, recommend 8 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and she loses her house to pay for it. 8 years. With good behavior, she'd serve about 6.5. But here's the important part as a victim. You have the right to make a statement before the judge accepts the plea. You can tell the court how her actions affected you. I thought about that. The chance to face Karen in court and tell her and the judge exactly what she'd done. When? The plea hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I'll be there. So will other victims if they choose. This is your chance for closure, Mrs. Chun. The night before the plea hearing, I sat in my garden among my David Austin roses. They'd bloomed beautifully, despite everything. Apricot and cream petals, layer after layer, just like I'd dreamed. These roses had cost me $15,000 in fraudulent fines, weeks of stress, and countless sleepless nights. But they'd also led to exposing a massive fraud that had hurt dozens of families. They'd led to justice. I was writing my victim impact statement on my laptop, trying to find the right words. How do you summarize the fear, the anger, the violation of having someone forge your signature and steal your identity? How do you explain what it felt like to be threatened in your own home? My phone buzzed. A text from Tom Henderson. Whatever you say tomorrow, know that we're all proud of you. You turned a nightmare into justice. See you in court. More texts came in. From Susan Park. From James Rothstein. From the Johnsons, the Martinez family, Mrs. Patterson. 21 families whose money Karen had stolen, all of them thanking me. I looked at my roses, touched their soft petals, and finished writing my statement. Tomorrow, Karen Whitmore would face the consequences of her choices, and I would finally get to tell my truth. But as I closed my laptop and headed inside, I noticed something odd. A car I didn't recognize, parked down the street, engine running, headlights off, just sitting there in the darkness. I watched for a moment. The car didn't move. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice I recognized immediately. Karen, you think you've won, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. You think tomorrow is the end. But Barbara, you have no idea what you've started. My lawyer told me something interesting today. Something about how HOA presidents can be held personally liable for certain actions. Something about how you might have violated some laws yourself in your little investigation. My heart started pounding. Karen, you're not supposed to contact me. I'm not threatening you, Barbara. I'm warning you. Tomorrow, when I plead guilty, I'm not going down alone. I have information, documents, evidence of things you did, and I'm going to make sure the judge knows everything. The line went dead. I looked out my window. The strange car was still there, but now I could see movement inside. Someone watching my house. My hands were shaking as I called Agent Morrison's emergency number. Agent Morrison, Karen just called me. She said she has evidence against me. She said she's going to tell the judge tomorrow that I broke laws too. And there's someone watching my house right now. There was a long pause on the other end. Mrs. Chun, I need you to stay inside and lock your doors. I'm sending a unit to your location right now. And tomorrow, ... Tomorrow we'll deal with whatever Karen thinks she has. But I need you to tell me something honest. There any truth to what she's claiming? Anything you did during your investigation that might have crossed a line? I thought about everything I've done. Going through HOA records, checking email logs, comparing signatures, building a coalition of victims, contacting the FBI. Had I crossed any lines? I honestly didn't know. I don't think so, I said. But Agent Morrison, what if she's right? What if I did something illegal without realizing it? Then we'll deal with it tomorrow in court. But Mrs. Chun, I've reviewed everything you did. You were careful. You were thorough. And most importantly, you were right. Don't let Karen's last-minute desperate manipulation make you doubt that. I hung up and watched as 2 police cars pulled up, checking on the suspicious vehicle. It turned out to be Nathan Guest, a rideshare driver waiting for a pickup. But Karen's call had achieved exactly what she wanted. I was terrified. Tomorrow I would walk into that courtroom thinking I was facing down my tormentor. But what if instead I was walking into a trap? Karen arrested in handcuffs. 23 federal charges, facing 8 to 12 years night before plea hearing. Karen calls threatening to expose Barbara's illegal actions in court. Do you think Barbara did anything illegal? What could Karen possibly have? Comment your theories. Ransomware in email. Karen researched dark web attacks, trying to extort Barbara one last time before sentencing. Part 4 finale. The shocking truth about HOA fines. Revealed Karen fined $15,000 for my rose garden, so I exposed her embezzlement scheme recap. Quick opening. Karen Whitmore had been arrested on 23 federal charges for her $93,000 fraud scheme. She'd agreed to plead guilty in exchange for 8 years in prison. But the night before the hearing, she'd called me with a threat. She had evidence I'd broken laws too, and she was going to tell the judge. Now I was walking into that courtroom not knowing if I was the victim or about to become the accused. Scene 1, the courtroom. I sat in the federal courthouse gallery at 8, my hands gripping the wooden bench so tightly my knuckles were white. Agent Morrison sat beside me, her presence reassuring but not quite calming my racing heart. "Remember," she whispered, "Karen is desperate. Whatever she says, whatever she claims to have, it's a last attempt to drag you down with her. The prosecutors have reviewed everything you did. You're clean." I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. Around me sat faces I knew. Tom Henderson, Susan Park, James Rothstein, the Johnson family, the Martinezes, Mrs. Patterson, 21 victims total, all here to see justice served. The bailiff called out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Thornan." We stood as Judge Thornan entered, her black robes flowing. She was in her early 60s. With gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Please be seated," she said. "We're here today for the plea hearing of United States versus Karen Marie Whitmore. Will the defendant please rise?" Karen stood, flanked by her public defender. She was wearing a simple navy dress, her hair neatly pulled back, no makeup. She looked nothing like the polished, intimidating woman who'd stood in my garden threatening me with fines just months ago. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chun, stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has agreed to plead guilty to 10 counts, 4 counts of mail fraud, 2 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of computer fraud and abuse, 1 count of identity theft, and 1 count of attempted extortion." "Ms. Whitmore," Judge Thornton said, "do you understand these charges?" "Yes, Your Honor," Karen said quietly. "And you understand that by pleading guilty, you are waiving your right to a trial?" "Yes, Your Honor." "How do you plead to these charges?" Karen took a deep breath. "Guilty, Your Honor." A murmur went through the courtroom. I felt Tom Henderson squeezed my shoulder. Judge Thornton made notes. "The court accepts the plea. Before we proceed to sentencing recommendations, the victims have a right to make impact statements." Mrs. Barbara Chun, "I understand you wish to address the court." My mouth went dry. This was it. I stood on shaking legs. "Yes, Your Honor." Seen to Barbara's statement, I walked to the podium, my prepared statement clutched in my hand. I looked at Karen. She stared straight ahead, refusing to meet my eyes. I cleared my throat and began. "Your Honor, my name is Barbara Chun. I've been the HOA president of Meadowbrook Commons for 3 years, and a resident for 12. On a Tuesday morning in April, I was planting roses in my front garden. Heritage roses I'd saved 2 years to buy. I was happy, excited about making my home more beautiful. My voice was steady now, gaining strength. 3 days later, I received a notice that I was being fined $15,000 for those roses. $15,000. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I discovered it wasn't a mistake at all. It was the beginning of the most frightening experience of my life. I looked down at my notes, then back up at the judge. Karen Whitmore didn't just fine me. She forged my signature on dozens of documents. She hacked my email account and read my private correspondence for months. She created fake board positions for herself. She added herself to our HOA bank account and made herself the primary holder. She threatened to destroy my life if I didn't resign and let her take over. I paused, feeling the weight of those months pressing down on me. But she didn't just hurt me. She targeted 21 families in our neighborhood. Elderly Mrs. Chun on Maple Street paid a $5,000 fine and went without her heart medication for a month because she couldn't afford both. The Johnson family had to cancel their daughter's college visit trip because they'd paid Karen $2,500 for parking their RV. The Martinez family took out a loan to pay $3,000 for a mailbox that was supposedly 2 inches too tall. My voice broke slightly. I took a breath and continued. These weren't wealthy people trying to dodge legitimate fees. These were families living paycheck to paycheck who received official-looking notices with what they believed was my signature telling them they had to pay or face legal action. They trusted the system. They trusted that the HOA president wouldn't lie to them, and Karen exploited that trust to steal $48,700. I looked directly at Karen now. She was still staring straight ahead, but I saw a muscle in her jaw twitching. Your Honor, what Karen did wasn't just fraud. It was a betrayal of everything a community is supposed to be. We're supposed to look out for each other, help each other, trust each other. She turned our neighborhood into a place of fear and suspicion. Neighbors stopped talking to neighbors because everyone was afraid of being fined. People stopped planting flowers, or painting their doors, or doing anything that might attract Karen's attention. I gripped the podium, and when she was caught, when the FBI came to her door, she didn't accept responsibility. She tried to destroy evidence. She tried to intimidate witnesses. She sent me ransomware, trying to encrypt my computer and extort more money. She filed a frivolous defamation lawsuit to drain my resources. And last night, she called me threatening to lie to this court about me breaking laws, trying one last time to drag me down with her. Judge Thornton's eyes sharpened at that. She made a note. Your Honor, I ask that you impose a sentence that reflects not just the money Karen stole, but the trust she destroyed, the fear she created, and the lives she damaged. Thank you. I walked back to my seat on shaking legs. Agent Morrison squeezed my hand. Well done, she whispered. Scene 3, Karen's evidence. Judge Thornton looked at the defense table. Does the defense wish to respond before we proceed to sentencing recommendations? Karen's public defender stood. Your Honor, my client would like to address the court briefly. My heart started pounding. Here it came. Whatever Karen had planned. Karen stood. Your Honor, I want to start by saying I take full responsibility for my actions. I was wrong, and I hurt people, and I'm deeply sorry. She paused, and I saw her hands trembling slightly. But I also want the court to know that I wasn't the only one who acted improperly. Mrs. Chun, in her investigation of me, accessed private financial records without authorization. She organized what amounts to a conspiracy among neighbors to build a case against me. She contacted the FBI without giving me a chance to explain or correct any alleged mistakes. I felt ice in my veins. I have documentation here, Karen continued, her lawyer handing papers to the judge, showing that Mrs. Chun accessed HOA financial records that were supposed to be confidential. She had no board authorization to review detailed transaction histories. She also stopped right there, Judge Thornton said sharply. Ms. Whitmore, are you seriously arguing that the victim of your fraud committed crimes by investigating your crimes? Karen faltered. Your Honor, I'm simply pointing out that. Let me see these documents, the judge said. The bailiff brought them to her. Judge Thornton spent 2 minutes reviewing them in silence. Then she looked up. Ms. Whitmore, these documents show that Mrs. Chun, as the sitting HOA president, reviewed financial records that she had every legal right to review. As president, she has fiduciary responsibility to examine HOA finances. There is nothing improper here whatsoever. Relief flooded through me. The judge continued, her voice cold. Furthermore, I'm deeply troubled that you attempted to use this hearing to make unfounded allegations against your victim. This demonstrates exactly the kind of manipulative behavior the prosecution described. Karen's face went pale. Your Honor, I didn't mean. Sit down, Ms. Whitmore. We're moving to sentencing. Scene for the sentence. Prosecutor Sarah Chun stood. Your Honor, The government recommends a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. We also request full restitution of $48,700 to the victims, plus an additional $25,000 in fines to the government. We further recommend that the defendant's property be seized and sold to satisfy the restitution and fines. The evidence shows she used her home as a base of operations for this fraud scheme, storing forged documents and conducting illegal hacking activities from that location. Karen's lawyer tried to object. "Your Honor, 8 years is excessive for a first-time offender who Judge Thornton held upper hand." "Counsel, I've reviewed the pre-sentence report. I've heard from the victims. I've heard from your client, and I've observed her behavior in this courtroom today, attempting to smear a victim who did nothing but expose her crimes." She looked directly at Karen. "Ms. Witt, you engaged in a calculated, methodical fraud scheme that lasted 8 months. You didn't steal from strangers or corporations. You stole from your neighbor's people who lived next door to you, people who waved to you in the morning, people who trusted you. You forged signatures. You hacked email accounts. You created fake documents. You threatened witnesses. You attempted cyber extortion. And even now, facing the consequences of your actions, you tried to falsely accuse your primary victim of wrongdoing." Judge Thornton paused, letting her words sink in. "This court has seen many fraud cases. What makes yours particularly egregious is not just the money you stole, but the trust you violated and the community you destroyed. You turned a neighborhood into a prison where people were afraid to live their lives." Karen was crying now, silent tears running down her face. "Therefore, I am sentencing you to 10 years in federal prison. Not 8. You will serve this sentence in a federal correctional institution to be determined by the Bureau of Prisons. Upon release, you will serve 3 years of supervised release, with conditions including mental health counseling and a prohibition on serving in any HOA or community organization leadership position. 10 years to more than the prosecutor recommended. You will pay full restitution of $48,700 to the victims. You will pay a fine of $50,000 to the United States government. Your property located at 715 Maple Street will be seized and sold, with proceeds going toward these payments." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. "This court is adjourned." Scene 5 Justice served as the marshals led Karen away. She looked back one last time. Our eyes met. I didn't see anger anymore. I didn't see arrogance or superiority. I just saw a broken woman who'd destroyed her own life through greed and need for control. Part of me felt sad for her, but mostly, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and justice. Outside the courthouse, Tom Henderson pulled me into a bear hug. "You did it, Barbara. You actually did it." Susan Park was crying happy tears. 10 years, she got what she deserved. James Rothstein shook my hand firmly, and we're all getting our money back. Every penny. Agent Morrison approached me. "Senora Chun, I want you to know in my 15 years with the Bureau, I've rarely seen a civilian do such thorough investigative work. You built a case that would have taken my team months to assemble. You should be proud." I felt tears streaming down my face. "I just wanted to plant roses," I said, laughing through the tears. "Well," Agent Morrison smiled, "those must be some very special roses." Scene SIX 6 months later. Epilogue 6 months later. I knelt in my front garden on a bright October morning, trimming my David Austin roses. They'd bloomed spectacularly all summer, layer after layer of apricot and cream petals, exactly as I'd dreamed. Meadowbrook Commons had healed. All 21 families had received full restitution. Karen's house had been sold. The proceeds distributed to victims and the government. A nice young couple with 2 kids had bought it and were already becoming beloved members of the community. Our HOA had new bylaws, new safeguards, new transparency. But more than that, we had our trust back. Neighbors talked to neighbors again. Kids played in yards without fear of fines. People planted flowers and painted doors and lived their lives. The Johnson family's daughter had gotten into her dream college. Mrs. Chun had her medications and a clean bill of health. The Martinezes had repainted their mailbox bright purple just because they could. "Morning, Barbara." Mrs. Patterson called from across the street. "Your roses are absolutely gorgeous." I waved back, smiling. "Thank you. Come by later, and I'll give you some cuttings." My phone buzzed with an email from Agent Morrison. The subject line read, "Update." I opened it. "Mrs. Chun, thought you'd want to know. Karen Whitmore was transferred this week to FCI Danbury in Connecticut, where she served her sentence. She'll be eligible for parole in 8.5 years with good behavior. The U.S. Attorney's Office asked me to thank you again for your cooperation. Your courage to stand up to a bully helped us put away someone who would have continued hurting people for years." Agent Rebecca Morrison and I looked at my roses, touched their soft petals, and smiled. It had started with a $15,000 fine for planting roses. It had ended with justice, healing, and a community restored. And my roses? They were still blooming, beautiful, and defiant. A reminder that sometimes standing up for what's right even when it's scary, even when it's hard, is exactly what you're supposed to do. I went back to my gardening, humming along to the Beatles, exactly where this whole story had started. But this time, I was free. Asterisk. Asterisk. The end asterisk. Asterisk emotional resolution. Karen sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Loses everything justice served. All victims get full restitution. $48,700 returned. Karen's house seized. Final message. Standing up to bullies is worth it. Community healed. Trust restored. Roses still blooming. Call to action. Have you ever had to stand up to someone abusing power? Share your victory story in the comments. And if this story taught you anything about standing up for what's right, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.